There comes a moment in every life, often quietly, almost invisibly, when the old strategies stop working. It doesn't crash in with thunder. It doesn't arrive with warning labels or flashing signs. It comes after long nights where the weight of trying keeps you awake. It creeps in after you've exhausted every affirmation, every productivity hack, every desperate prayer disguised as a plan. You've been doing everything, haven't you? You've journaled, visualized, meditated, aligned your crystals, tracked your cycles, written out goals, read the self-help books, watched the videos, made the vision boards. You've begged the universe, made deals with God, tried to fix your thoughts, rewire your brain, raise your frequency, smile through the pain. And yet, nothing moves. Nothing sticks. Nothing flows. You stare at the ceiling. You whisper to the sky, why isn't this working? But what if it isn't a question of effort? What if it's a question of energy? We've been taught that alignment means action, that success means strategy, that healing means constant work. But here's the harsh and liberating truth. You can't force alignment. You've been trying to grab the universe with clenched fists, when in truth it only answers open palms. Because energy doesn't lie, and no matter how many positive words you speak, no matter how many affirmations you chant, if your vibration whispers, "I'm not enough," that's what life hears. It doesn't obey your words. It mirrors your state. Carl Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." You've been resisting your current experience by trying to manifest your way out of it, affirming over your pain, journaling over your fear, trying to bypass the brokenness instead of meeting it, trying to be powerful before you've been present. But let's slow down for a moment. What if your life isn't punishing you? What if it's reflecting you? When you hustle not from inspiration but from desperation, when you chase goals as band-aids for your wounds, when you pray not from belief but from fear, the world listens. It listens with brutal honesty, and the truth it echoes back is simple. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Let that settle. You can be doing all the right things. You can have the goals, the vision, the steps. But if the version of you taking those steps still believes, "I need this to feel worthy," then the chase itself becomes your block. Because chasing is not alignment, it's a symptom of inner fragmentation. We've been sold a lie, that if you just push harder, hustle longer, meditate more deeply, you'll arrive. That if you optimize every hour, fill every moment, raise your vibration just right, then life will reward you. But Jung didn't teach us to chase. He taught us to inquire. He asked, why are you chasing in the first place? What wound is your goal covering? What part of you is trying to escape its own reflection by running toward something shiny? When you crave love obsessively, it's rarely just about love. It's the echo of abandonment. It's the orphaned inner child crying out, "Will someone please stay this time?" When you're addicted to achievement, it's often not ambition. It's the exhausted adult trying to prove your worth to a parent who never saw you. You've been trying to manifest clarity while being unconsciously driven by confusion, trying to attract peace while vibrating in panic, trying to affirm abundance while fearing poverty every second of the day. That's why nothing sticks. Not because you're broken, not because the universe is cruel, but because your energy is a contradiction, a tug-of-war between your conscious intentions and your unconscious beliefs. And here's the most overlooked truth. You can't fake energy. You can post all the quotes, repeat all the mantras, listen to all the podcasts. But if your nervous system is still locked in survival mode, if your inner self is still saying, "I'm not safe unless I get this," the universe hears that. And it mirrors that, not to punish you, but to reveal you to yourself. So what do you do when nothing works? You stop. You stop forcing. You stop pushing. You stop proving. Not out of fear, but out of faith. Not from weakness, but from wisdom. You return to stillness. You breathe. You listen. You allow. Because in stillness, the real shift begins. The unconscious starts to speak. The shadow begins to integrate. And alignment stops being a thing you do and becomes a state you are. Surrender isn't the absence of effort. It's the presence of trust. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That means the unhealed parts of you, the ones you haven't acknowledged, The fears you suppress, the wounds you hide behind smiles, they're the ones pulling the strings. And if you don't stop to meet them, to witness them, to love them, they'll manifest not the future you want, but the one you unconsciously believe you deserve. So if you're exhausted from trying, take this as your sign. Not to give up, but to give in to your own truth. To let go of the chase. To stop begging the world to affirm your worth. To stop mistaking control for confidence. You don't need to prove your readiness. You need to become the version of yourself who already is. Because here's the most powerful move you can make right now. Do nothing, not in laziness, but in presence. Not in fear, but in faith. Not to escape, but to return to yourself. The version of you who isn't grasping. The version of you who trusts the unfolding. The version of you who doesn't hustle for love, success, or peace, because they've remembered. It was never out there. It was always inside, waiting. And once you reach that place, the place where doing stops and becoming begins, you no longer chase alignment, you are alignment. Most people walk through life believing they're being tested. They look at their delays, their heartbreaks, their failed efforts, and they think, this must be a lesson. This must be a test of my patience, my resilience, my belief. And while that feels noble, even comforting, it misses the deeper truth. You're not being tested. You're being mirrored. Life is not pushing back against you. It's reflecting you. Every thought, every frequency, every unconscious story that pulses beneath your conscious mind. The delays are not punishment. They are echoes. Echoes of your vibration. And most of that vibration, it doesn't come from your affirmations. It comes from the silent identity hidden deep in your psyche. Carl Jung understood this with chilling clarity. He said, "Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakens." In other words, the real magic, the real transformation, doesn't come from vision boards or signs in the sky. It comes from radical introspection, from staring into your own emotional basement and asking, what's driving this? What belief system lives beneath this desire? Because here's the truth. If your unconscious identity says, I'm not enough, then no amount of conscious effort will override that. You can speak as confidently as you want. You can tell the world you're aligned, healed, elevated. But your energy speaks louder, and your unconscious never lies. The tightness in your chest when you think about your future? That's not inspiration. That's your body whispering, this doesn't feel safe yet. The anxiety that rises when you talk about your dreams? That's not intuition. That's your unconscious screaming. You don't actually believe this is for you. And the universe, it's always listening. But not to your words, to your energy. That's why some people work endlessly and see no results. Because they're not creating from alignment. They're creating from a fractured self. They're building dreams on top of trauma, goals on top of guilt, plans on top of panic. They've mastered the outer rituals, but neglected the inner reality. Let's be honest. The modern spiritual world has glamorized manifestation, made it into an aesthetic. Morning rituals, rose quartz, handwritten intentions, scripting your dream life under the full moon. And there's beauty in that. But when those tools are used to bypass pain, rather than integrate it, they become distractions. Glitter on top of a gaping wound. And your unconscious sees right through it. You can't out-manifest your shadow. You can't out-visualize your trauma. You can't chant, I'm enough, while your nervous system still flinches with every delay. So what do? You stop. You stop trying to fix yourself with noise. You stop chasing clarity in chaos. You stop begging for signs and sit in stillness, long enough to hear the ones already inside you. Because the real work isn't louder, it's quieter. Jung didn't teach people how to manifest. He taught them how to integrate, to bring the unconscious into the light. And integration only happens in silence. When the noise dies down, when the ego stops panicking, when the masks fall away, that's when your soul begins to speak. And that voice, the one beneath all the fear, is calm. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It doesn't beg. It simply knows. It knows you're already enough. It knows you're already on the path. It knows the desire you're chasing is actually a portal, a message from the unconscious, asking to be witnessed, not fixed. Because here's the twist no one talks about. Every desire is sacred, but not because of what it gives you, because of what it reveals. You crave love? Good. But look deeper. What part of you still believes love is something to earn, not receive? You want success? Beautiful. But pause. What belief inside you says, I am only valuable when I'm achieving? These questions are uncomfortable, and they should be. Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But if you avoid the discomfort, you avoid the transformation. And if you avoid the transformation, you stay stuck in the loop, chasing, forcing, begging while calling it healing. But healing is not obsession. Healing is observation. It's sitting with your resistance and asking what it's trying to teach you. It's noticing when your ego wants proof and choosing to trust anyway. It's allowing your shadow to speak without trying to silence it. With more positive vibes. Because positive vibes without shadow work, that's spiritual bypassing. That's energy dysregulation in disguise. And here's the thing. You can't fool your frequency. You can fake the words. You can fake the smile. You can even fake the belief. But your energy is the truth teller. And life always responds to your energy. So what does that mean for you right now? It means if you're in a moment of silence, of void, of uncertainty, don't rush to escape it. Don't reach for another technique, another hack, another motivational high. Instead, pause, breathe, and listen. Because that silence you're so quick to fill, that's not failure. That's the invitation. The invitation to finally come home to yourself. To hear what your unconscious has been trying to say for years. To feel what your ego has spent a lifetime avoiding. You are not being blocked. You are being recalibrated. You are being stripped of everything false, everything forced, everything frantic, so you can finally become the person who doesn't just want the dream, but can hold it. Because here's the most important truth Jung ever pointed us toward. You are not here to chase alignment. You are here to become it. And becoming isn't fast. It's not sexy. It's not Instagrammable. It's still, it's slow, it's sacred. So if nothing is moving right now, take heart. It doesn't mean you're stuck. It means your soul is doing the deep work. Not the visible work, not the celebrated work, but the work that changes everything. So breathe. Don't rush. Don't chase. Let the noise fall away and listen. Because beneath the doubt, beneath the fear, beneath the timeline you're clinging to, there is a voice waiting. Not outside you, within. And it's whispering. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not blocked. You're just remembering. Let go. Not as an act of resignation. Not because you're tired of caring, but because you finally realized you were never meant to control the outcome. You were meant to understand yourself through the journey of it. Detachment isn't indifference. It isn't apathy. It's awakening. It's the inner confidence that whispers, even if this never arrives, I am still enough. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally remembered who you are without it. Carl Jung understood detachment not as some spiritual concept, but as an energetic realignment. He knew the human psyche doesn't transform through obsession. It transforms through surrender. Not the passive kind, but the kind forged in fire. The kind that says, I have done the work. Now I trust what's beyond my control. This kind of surrender is terrifying, especially when you've built your identity around the chase. Around the idea that if you let go, you'll lose everything. That stillness equals stagnation. That rest means you're falling behind, but it's a lie. Stillness is not stagnation. Stillness is integration. And once you stop clinging to outcomes, once you release your grip on how things should unfold, something sacred happens. The void arrives. At first, it feels like emptiness. You let go and expect a miracle, but nothing happens. No messages, no signs. No shifts, just silence. And that silence, it's not just absence. It's the void, the space between what was and what's becoming. Jung called it the creative void, the in-between, the chaos before the cosmos, the place where the old self dies but the new self hasn't yet arrived. It's the moment in the caterpillar's journey, when the cocoon feels like a coffin, when nothing makes sense and everything feels lost. But this is not death. It's transformation. The void isn't punishing you. It's preparing you. Not for what you want, but for what you're meant to hold. And that preparation begins where the noise ends. Because in this space of apparent nothingness, everything is actually happening beneath the surface. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Your unconscious is rewriting its blueprint. Your frequency is shifting from need to knowing. You can't always feel it. That's the trap. You expect spiritual growth to feel good. But real transformation? It's quiet. It's uncomfortable. It strips you down to the raw, vulnerable truth. Who am I when there's nothing left to chase? That's the question the void asks you. And most people can't handle it. So they run. They run back to old patterns, old obsessions, old wounds that at least feel familiar. They chase for the illusion of control, because sitting in uncertainty feels unbearable. But that's the test. Can you hold your ground when everything feels uncertain? Can you embody your future before it physically arrives? Can you trust the unfolding? Not because you see it, but because you are it? If you can't, you'll self-sabotage. You'll start chasing again. You'll start doubting again. You'll energetically block what's been quietly aligning for you. Because the universe doesn't respond to panic. It responds to peace. And peace is only possible when you've met your shadow. This is where we go even deeper. Because manifestation, real manifestation, is not about wishing for more. It's about facing what you've ignored. And what you've ignored is what's been running your life. Jung called this the shadow. Not your evil side, but your hidden self. The rejected parts, the shamed parts, the scared parts, the pain you pushed down, the truth you edited, the emotions you buried beneath performance. You've been trying to manifest love, but if your shadow believes I'm unlovable, you'll push it away. You've been visualizing wealth, but if your shadow believes I'm not safe with money, you'll sabotage it. You've been affirming success, but if your shadow screams, I don't deserve it, you'll unconsciously repel it. Because the universe doesn't just respond to your words, it responds to your wholeness. And you cannot be whole while rejecting pieces of yourself. This is the real work, not the glamorous kind, not the curated aesthetic spirituality, but the messy, raw, deeply honest kind. The kind that sits in front of the mirror and says, I've been begging the world to love me, but I've never loved myself. The kind that sees the overachiever and asks, what are you afraid will happen if you slow down? The kind that looks your insecurity in the face and says, you can come with me, but you're not driving anymore. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about reclaiming the parts of you you abandoned just to survive. The insecure child, the angry teenager, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the silent, aching, exhausted self who just wanted to be enough. These parts don't need punishment. They need permission to exist, to be seen, to be heard. And when you finally stop running from them, when you say, yes, even you belong, you take your power back. You stop manifesting from fracture. You start magnetizing from wholeness. Because here's the truth no one talks about. You don't manifest what you say. You manifest what you've made peace with. And peace is not performance, it's presence. So the next time you're tempted to chase something, a text, a timeline, a transformation, pause. Not because you're lazy, but because you're wise. Ask yourself, what part of me still thinks this will fix me? Then love that part. Not later. Now. Because the more you integrate your shadow, the less you need the world to validate your light. And when you no longer need, you no longer chase. You simply become. And in that becoming, the universe doesn't just respond, it aligns. This is the moment where everything changes. Not because something new appears, but because something ancient is remembered. You've journeyed through effort, through obsession, through surrender, through silence. You've touched your shadow. You've faced the void. And now you stand in front of the final door. The self, not the version of you that hustles. Not the one who overthinks or overcompensates. Not the one shaped by rejection, expectation, or trauma. The real you. The eternal self. The one who was whole long before the world told you otherwise. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the sacred act of becoming who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who you became to be loved, but who you've always been beneath the noise, beneath the masks, beneath the conditioning. And here's the deepest, most confronting truth of all. You're not manifesting. You're remembering. You thought you were building a life. You thought you were trying to attract something new. But in reality, you were uncovering what's always been yours, hidden underneath years of survival, shame, and self-forgetting. You were not born broken. You were born aware, connected, whole. But life, in its complexity, its wounds, its noise, taught you how to forget. Forget your worth. Forget your intuition. Forget your inner power. And so you began chasing, not because you lacked anything, but because you were taught to look outward instead of inward, to earn love instead of embody it, to perform worth instead of believe it, to micromanage the future instead of trust the unfolding. But now, after all the striving, after all the breakdowns and breakthroughs, you've reached the final truth. You are already it. The answer is simple. You'd be you. Not the small self, not the persona, but the powerful, peaceful, grounded soul that has always existed beneath the survival scripts. That version of you, the one who moves from essence, not ego, doesn't need to prove. They remember. They remember that nothing real can be taken from them, that what's meant for them has always been theirs, that their power isn't in effort, it's in embodiment. So now your work is no longer to fix. It's to feel. It's to integrate. It's to trust. To pause when your ego wants to panic. To breathe when the noise gets loud. To align your nervous system with your truth. Because you are no longer chasing destiny. You are becoming the version of you that no longer blocks it. And when that happens, when your energy says, I am ready, I am enough, I trust, the universe listens. Not because you said the right words, but because your frequency finally matches your fate. So repeat this to your soul. I let go. I align. I receive. Not from need, from remembrance. Because this was never about creating a new self. It was about shedding what's not you and coming home, not to a version, but to your essence. And now you've arrived. Welcome back. You are not manifesting. You are remembering.